Good morning. We're back at you, gloves off, and today we have a special guest. Is Brett Gould, and he's from Louisiana. He's an NRA firearms instructor, ex-police lawman, and we're going to be talking about concealed carry of firearms and weapons, and the insights of an actual combative situation and what one should be looking for. Okay, because there's a lot of myths involved, especially with concealed handguns. People say, since I carry a pistol, that's all I need. No, there's a lot more to it than just that. Okay? So good morning, Brett. How are we doing today?
I'm good, Paul. How are you?
How's everything over in Louisiana?
Well, it's funny that we're talking about concealed carry because violent crime is on the rise, and many more people, especially ladies, young women, are getting their concealed carry permits.
No, you're absolutely correct. My daughter asked about it about a month ago, and I said, well, number one, we need to start training in how to shoot before you go out there and just carry, which one fits you, and all that good stuff. And let's talk a little bit about the laws that both Texas has and what Louisiana has. Are they similar? Are they different? What do you see?
There are some subtle, very subtle differences. For example, before Texas had the concealed carry, you could not carry a loaded weapon in your vehicle. Now, since Texas has concealed carry, as long as you have your permit, you were clear on that, and they made some upgrades in their law with the open carry.
Correct.
Now, Louisiana has always had open carry, and Louisiana has always allowed citizens to carry a loaded weapon in any shape or fashion inside the vehicle historically. Now, we got concealed carry a few years ago, and we were very happy. Now, there are some subtle nuances as far as the laws relating to self-defense. Texas has a very beneficial law where if someone is in your yard after dark trying to steal something, you can actually shoot them, whereas in Louisiana, we cannot. We both have what is called the castle doctrine, meaning
Correct.
that your home is considered, quote, unquote, your castle, and you do not have to retreat. If a person comes across the threshold of your door, you are able to use deadly force.
Correct.
A famous case in Texas many years ago was a repo man who is lawfully allowed to repossess a car, went on a homeowner's private property to take back the car. Well, the homeowner pulled out a 30-30 lever action and shot and killed the repo man. And I remember the press conference where the district attorney says it's unfortunate, but the law in Texas is clear. You go on someone's property after dark, you try to steal something, they can shoot you lawfully.
Correct. And it's a sad case because, stuff like that occurs all the time. And
It does.
It does, and that castle doctrine changes things because, especially in the Dallas area, you had a lot of crimes of people breaking in, not only abducting kids and raping and stealing and killing and all that good stuff that these criminals love to do. And that castle doctrine was changed and modified. And in a way, it's good because, number one, we need to protect ourselves. And second, I'm a strong believer in the Second Amendment and the First and all the amendments that are up there in our Constitution, and we should follow them. But I know now that there is a lot of talk about Second Amendment lawful carry throughout the states. What do you see that?
Correct.
Do you see that changing anytime soon?
What I have seen in my areas is that we have had a pretty big uptick in crime in my areas. I worked my area for 20 years with one agency, and I've done 9 years with other agencies in law enforcement, and I was on the front lines, so to speak. And our violent crime here in New Iberia, Louisiana, and in Lafayette, Louisiana, every night on the news virtually. A night ago, we had a drive-by where 4 people were shot in an area where I used to work. And many, many more people now are getting into the concealed carry. And like we said, especially the women are watching the TV. And when you get bombarded every night with more shootings and killings, it does wake you up.
No, you're absolutely correct. And there's a difference between self-defense, actual training in a combative situation or combative system or style, and people do not know the difference. I see a lot of folks say, well, I have my pistol, or I have my license, or I carry. Well, that's good enough to a point. But most situations and most fights and most gunfights are not that far apart. I mean, it happens quick. And if you do not
That is
have
correct.
and if you do not have that training, more than likely you're going to be the one that's going to get hurt. Correct?
Yes, sir. The old FBI uniform crime reporting statistics used to show that the average gunfight occurred within 6 feet, approximately 6 rounds fired, and after the 2-second mark, it was already over. Now, research that has been done throughout law enforcement over the years, we had something called the Tuller drill that was invented by Dennis Tuller, and it was later revised to be the 21-foot rule.
Correct.
And it was done to show that, the old adage used to be, the dummy brings a knife to a gunfight. Well, those of us who've actually been to the crime scenes and seen the bodies actually know it's the dummy who brings the gun to the knife fight.
No, you're absolutely correct. Because a knife fight and person that is skilled with a knife you'll never see that blade, number one. And second,
and that's another.
Go ahead.
Another good point. That's another good point, Paul, is that I keep trying to emphasize when I teach people in classes that people watch Matt Dillon on Gunsmoke, and they see Matt Dillon step out into the street, and they think the guy with the knife is going to step out into the street, and then they're going to fire their 2 shots, and it's over. The knife is primarily an ambush weapon. You don't normally see it. You feel it, and all of a sudden you're cut.
Right.
And the people with the gun culture do not wish to acknowledge that there are other things that must be done in order to survive. And I've always emphasized this, that people should, when they buy a gun, not just take a concealed carry class, but they should go to a reputable gun instructor. But they also should go and see a person like you who is an expert with the hand and the knife. Because if the real attack is going to occur within 6 feet, that's one long step. I'm 5'11", and I can cover that one step in a blink of an eye. So that means if you are in a gunfight, you are also in a fist fight, and you are also in a knife fight as well.
Correct. Many people do not realize how quick a fight is. They do not understand. Let's just take a gun out of the equation, and let's go into a knife, empty hands. A fight does not last more than 10, 15 seconds. If you all are struggling, and you see the struggle of the aftermath, especially in a bar situation, the bouncers have already taken care of that person. They're pulling them apart and dragging them outside. Okay? But the actual fight, the actual damage is 10, 15 seconds tops. You're not going to go out there and spar anybody, and you're not going to go out there and be beating up 10 people at one time. That happens very, very seldom in this world.
And Paul, that brings up the other issue too, is that we have to differentiate the sportsman from the people that are training for real life self-defense. There are people in the gun world who are sportsmen, just as there are people who do mixed martial arts that are sportsmen.
Correct.
The mindset is completely different. I'll give you a short analogy. One of the gunfight legends of the modern era was a man from the New York Police Department by the name of Jim Cirillo. You can go back and read his books. He survived many, many gunfights, and he was an expert marksman. And he went to an IDPA sport match many years ago to watch. Well, of course, he was a man of legendary status, so the local champion who just won the match asked gunfight master Cirillo if he wanted to run the course. He said, sure. Well, he didn't follow the rules. He went off of the course down a gully that was down the side of the course and took his time and shot all the targets from behind concealment from behind the levee. and maneuvered where nobody could see him, and he made his shots, and he came back, and the local champion said, well, you were real slow and you didn't follow the course. And his response was, yes, son, I survived. I've survived many gunfights. All you do is shoot at paper.
No, you're absolutely correct. And, you know, that's an awesome story. But that happens everywhere else. You know, I remember they were talking about the old gunfighters, you know, like Bat Masterson and everybody else, and they all used to say it's the calm one that wins. Those that are agitated are shooting all over the place. And that's, you know, that I see, okay? And I'm going to put that closer to, because many folks, both in Louisiana and in Texas, the majority of men and women grow up with somebody in their family hunting. They grow up, the majority grows up with guns around. Unfortunately, at some urban areas in the Dallas-Fort Worth and in Houston and San Antonio, some people will never see that. But the majority of folks that are out there, they grow up eating venison tamales and so on and so forth, and gumbo as well. You know what I'm saying? So stuff that we hunted. Sure. So guns are very much part of it. And what I'm getting at is, if you're calm and you're hunting out there and you're very calm when you're looking at the animal, more than likely you're going to come home with some meat with you. Understand? And if you're very agitated and you move around, all of a sudden you're not going to come back home with nothing. And it's patience, really.
That calm and that patience comes from training and from confidence and from skill. And that brings us into another area. One of the things that I outline with people as far as guns and self-defense are three big things. First off, of course, we have to have a gun. The second thing we've talked about is we have to have the skill. But something you and I touched on in a conversation a few weeks ago is the attitude, the heart.
Correct.
You have to learn and develop the heart and the attitude to be able to fight and defend yourself. You can have all of these other things, and that means nothing if you are not willing to step up to the plate.
Yeah, and I always tell people this. I can give you the speed, I can give you the skill, but the will comes from within. That will never happen. I can take a student that comes into my doors, and I look at him in his eyes, and if he stares back at you in your eyes, then you know that person's going to be good in the future. If he's looking down, looking around, never makes eye contact, that person's the fly-by-night. He's not going to be around there for a bit, you know. I'm not saying that person cannot develop technique, cannot develop skills. I'm just saying that when the time comes to prove yourself, God forbid, are you going to be there or not? And that's the ultimate test, right? Let's touch.
That is the ultimate test.
Here's one question that I was always asked, especially by women: which pistol should I carry? And
well, that's an interesting question, Paul, because cars are like vehicles. You've got people who like Ford, some like Chevy, some like Dodge. The best answer for that is to quote Clint Smith, the master. Clint always says to pick the largest weapon that you can handle and conceal effectively. And the reason why is because I find that there are many people who go and they get these small 380s and these small 9mm, and the first problem that they have is that the grips are very narrow and they're too small. You cannot get your good grip on it, and the grip to control the pistol under recoil is critical. A lot of people don't think about that. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I always hear people talking about, you'll hear a lot of experts who want to justify carrying the 9mm. Oh, it's all about placement. It's all about placement. Well, Paul, you own an exotic game ranch, correct?
Okay, correct.
And you know yourself that sometimes you can hit a large eland or an oryx or whatever perfectly, and sometimes they just don't go down, correct?
Correct. No, I've seen it. I've seen it left and right.
Well, my answer to the people who say that the caliber does not matter and it's all about placement, well, then I look at them and I say, okay, what are you carrying? And they'll say, oh, I've got the 9mm with the such and such fancy bullet, you know, the current hot bullet of the day. And I said, well, okay, then you're a hypocrite. And they look at me offended. They say, why you say that? And I said, very simple. If placement was all there was to it, then you should be carrying a 22 short in a Beretta Jetfire, because
Exactly
you say
right.
placement is everything. And I tell them, by your very actions, you are saying that stopping power in that pistol matters. You just have an opinion about which caliber you like, but to say that the caliber does not matter is a complete fallacy, because you can hunt pigs, you can hunt deer, even small bears with 10 millimeter, 44, 41.
Correct.
You can't do that with a 9 millimeter.
No, you're absolutely correct. You know, my the new rifle that I'm using right now is a 204 Ruger, and I'm using that right now for predator control. You know, coyotes and bobcats and stuff like that. And my son, who's 13 now, he's shooting a 300 Whisper. You know, and he's
right.
But that's a good caliber for his size. But
right.
We have to understand that if he's going to go out after a huge hog and stuff like that, which he's already backed down. Again, he practices. He shoots good. He's a better shot than I am, so he can take that. You know, there is an instance for shot placement, but again, a fight happens quick. Okay, and 9 millimeters are fast round, and we have a lot of people, as well you well know in experience, that are under the influence of something, of a local corner drugstore. Okay, so
yes.
So a 9 millimeter might not bring down that person that's a jack in the box. He's going to stand right back up. Okay, and that happens.
We have an instance of that. We have an actual instance of a person who did not go down very, very recently in the last year. The St. Cloud, Minnesota mall, where a Muslim got loose and was knifing people, and a former police chief and a competitive IDPA shooter was shooting a 9 millimeter with the fanciest, hottest plus P plus gold dot bullets. Shot this Muslim with the knife 6 times, 2, 2, and 2, and the guy went down and got back up at least twice with the best bullet. All of the bullets hit vital areas. All of the bullets expanded perfectly. And the only reason why the man was alive is his dumb luck, because he did not have any of those hand-to-hand combat skills that we were talking about. And you know, Paul, you know what I always see, Paul, as a martial artist myself, what is the most valuable skill of all?
What is that?
Footwork.
Exactly right.
Footwork. Footwork, people do not believe me. To learn to sidestep and attack takes years and years and years of training if you have the good DNA and the ability to do it. And I always point out, look at the UFC fighters and name off one guy who sidesteps a punch appropriately in the ring as a professional, and nobody can ever cite it because it rarely happens.
Right.
It's very rare.
No, you're correct.
And
the only one was that girl Holmes, which beat Rousey. She did it perfectly.
Right.
She's the only one. Yeah.
Right. It's a very, very rare skill. And Bruce Lee talked about that a lot, that footwork beats any technique, because if you are simply not there, it doesn't happen to you. And this goes back to the guy in the mall. Most people, and Paul, you are a professor in Savate with many years of training. Correct me if I'm wrong, but most people of average skill fight in straight lines. They go straight back and they go straight forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was what happened in the St. Cloud Mall. The guy came with the knife, and the gun guy did not step to the side and get off the line. He didn't step behind a clothing rack or anything to put an obstacle, because his combat training was incomplete. All he did was the gun.
No, you're absolutely correct. Now that takes us, what you mentioned there, that takes us to another phase. There's a lot of tactical shooting, combative tactical shooting instructors out there in the world now. Okay, you have a lot of great veterans that came back, and they're starting classes for folks to understand and experience that and to actually learn. You have good folks out there.
Correct.
Who do you know in the Texas area and also in Louisiana out there for people that are looking for that tactical training for a open carry, for a concealed carry, for a pistol, to take those courses?
In Texas, y'all are blessed because you have 2 former Delta Force experts One is by the name of Larry Vickers, and one is by the name of Paul Howe.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody watches any of the sporting channels, you will see Larry Vickers demonstrating weapons techniques on many, many different venues. He is a well-known guy. Now, I mentioned these two gentlemen because I know people who have been to their classes, and they are top-notch. One of the fallacies that you have to also realize is just because someone has extensive military credentials does not mean that they are a good instructor. For example, you were talking about this a couple of weeks ago about rank in Savate and being a professor. There are many fighters out there, but that does not make them a professor of Savate where they have teaching credentials, correct?
Absolutely. You have in the world in martial arts and pugilism, you have fighters who can't teach. You have coaches that can't fight. And then you have fighters that do both, can teach, and that person, they're rare. They're rarity. And you can find them. They exist, but it's rare. They're few and far in between. And one needs to understand the difference, you know. Most instructors that I see around, they've never been in a street fight. That's true. Most of them were protected by their sisters when they were growing up, okay? And
that is true.
The majority of them also could not fight out a wet paper bag. Plain and simple, I'm being straightforward and blunt. So when you see people flock to these schools because they either have charisma or they can spiel better than others, or they can BS their way like like a politician, okay? And what happens when you get into those schools? The first thing a person should ask is this: when was your last fight? Seriously. When was your last fight? I see all these folks on the internet. I see all these guys waving all these different knives. Frankly, when was it the last time you got into a fight? Well, actually, when was the last time you stabbed somebody?
You know, Paul, it's funny you mentioned that because I was just having a discussion with some gentlemen on Facebook about a well-known alleged Silat master who has a video out on YouTube and Facebook where he badly loses a mixed martial arts fight, does not even display proper boxing technique. I mean, I've seen schoolgirls off the street throw a better right cross than he did. And it's all on video, so it's all there for the world.
I saw that, and
it was terrible. It was terrible, and this person does all of these fancy demonstrations. And the point I'm getting at is people have to also be very careful when you see people who do video demonstrations, because they always need to understand that is a compliant opponent. The video has been well rehearsed, and it's not real. It does not reflect reality at all, and they don't understand this, that somebody can do a video and, boy, they look sharp and this and that, and then you go back and look at the guy's MMA fight, and he lost so badly it was terrible.
You have to understand that occurs. And when you're teaching somebody, that partner's there for a reason. And when I see individuals that start teaching and they're filming or they're beating up literally the partner that's there in front of you, your student, you're not teaching anything. You're just a bully. So when you teach a technique and you can teach the proper mechanics and you're seeing the effect on that person, that's something totally different. You don't have to hit somebody hard to make sure that the body moves correctly in the position that you want it to, for you to respond.
And that also transfers over to the gun, too. You see people that make people do all sorts of fancy drills and all this other stuff. I will cite two of the legendary gunfighters of the 20th century, Bill Jordan and Jelly Bryce.
Okay.
Jelly Bryce was on video recorded shooting in 2/5 of a second. He killed upwards of over 20 men as an FBI agent during the Prohibition era. So he was fighting the Bonnie and Clyde gangster-type people who were hardened, cold-blooded killers.
Mm-hmm.
And in his heyday, at least 20 of those people had a gun drawn on him, and he drew his own weapon and shot and killed them before they were able to even touch the trigger.
No, I believe you.
The point that I'm alluding to with him and with Bill Jordan, it was nothing fancy. It was speed, accuracy, and technique. and confidence with the weapon. All this other stuff you see in these fancy shooting schools where they have you shooting upside down and shooting in crazy other positions with all kind of fancy stuff. What people need to master, first off, is they need to, number one, have a gun. And I say that because many people think that having the gun in the purse or having the gun in the car qualifies, and it does not.
Right.
You must be able to access the weapon within 1.5 seconds as an average rule and place at least 2 shots on the target. Then you must be able to unconceal that weapon, meaning clear whatever clothes are over that weapon and effectively present that weapon and then fire, hitting the target and stopping the target. And you know, Paul, that brings up another thing that a lot of people do not consider. And you being on an exotic game ranch, you know this yourself. Just because something is shot, irregardless of what the caliber is, does not mean it is dead.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
it'll come after you. Yeah.
That is correct. And the reason why we are having to shoot something is because it is trying to kill us.
Mm-hmm.
So just because a person can pull a gun and put X number of rounds quickly into a target does not mean that target has stopped. And a lot of the gun people have got to understand that.
No, you're absolutely correct. I tell people this. What muscle group in the body has killed more people in the world? And they say, oh, the legs, the hands. No, it's the index finger. And the index finger is the little group of muscles on your index finger are the ones that have killed more people in the world. And,
that is correct.
And only because you've been shot, only because you've been cut with a knife, does not mean that you're out of being dangerous. In other words,
the average people are very tough, and we haven't even figured in the people that are on the drugs.
No, you're absolutely correct. And people that have will, they're going to continue. That's why you see in a lot of these fights, they believe, I'm going to cut your arm. In a lot of these systems, I'm going to cut your arm, your break. You're going to go into trauma and this and this. No. Most people are going to continue cutting you, and they're going to go forward. And in Savate, and you hear that a lot. They always tell me, well, you guys are. It's an overkill that you're hitting them so much. It's not overkill. It's actually an overskill. I'm going to hit you until I understand that you're not there. Why? Because maybe I missed 2-3 shots before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Once you're moving and I'm moving, its accuracy tends, everything changes. Is he wearing a leather jacket? That changes things. Okay? If you punch somebody in the stomach and he's wearing a leather jacket, that's going to muffle things a little bit better. Okay, what kind of shoes are you wearing? See, people don't look at that. When I see somebody approaching me, I already through my mind already said, okay, he's wearing cowboy boots, he's wearing combat boots, he's wearing Poindexter, or he's wearing Jesus shoes, flip-flops. Okay? Is he wearing shorts? Is he wearing leather pants? What's he wearing? Does he have a belt buckle? All that stuff already went through my head. It's, and when you see that, and when you start analyzing that, you already understand that if you get into an altercation, you have to pick the target, pick your strikes for that purpose. The same thing happens with guns, and the same thing happens with calibers. I personally carry 2 things: either a 45 ACP, which is 1911, or I carry a 20. Well, I used to carry a 22 mag Derringer in my pocket because I was under the impression. A 22 in the pocket is better than the 45 in the closet, so that's what I grew up with.
That's true.
And
that's true.
Either one's going to do damage. The Derringer, the portion of the Derringer is as soon as it's clicked and it goes off, God forbid you have to use it, it's going to make a very, very loud bang, which is going to scare the shit out of even the alley cats that are around. So what happens is that's number one. And when you use a hollow point into a 22 mag, it changes things a little bit better. Okay? But a 45, why do I carry 45 and other people say 9mm? I believe in the knockdown power. I believe that when you hit somebody, you want broken bones and you want stuff to snap for the person not to get back up. My life depends on it. the life of people that are around me depend on it in case I ever have to use that. And I go back to hunting wise, okay? I hunt with a pistol. And if I'm going to go hunt, I hunt with a pistol. Right now I use a 475 Lindbau. And I brought down a bunch of things with that. I brought down hyena in South Africa. I brought down all kinds of pigs and even water
Big
buffalo.
gun.
Yeah. So it's in bison. So I like that. The 357 Magnum, I believe, is a great. Remember the old Smith and Wesson Combat Model 66 that all the troopers used to have?
Oh, yeah.
I still have one
Bill
of those.
Jordan helped you develop that one.
You know, and I still use that. I don't shoot a 41 Magnum, but I believe that a 357 is a little bit more potent for that. You know, all these new guns that have come up in the last 15 to 20 years, like the Glocks. Personally, I don't like them. There's people out there that can argue left and right, and we can have coffee, and we can laugh, and everything else about it. But for me, it's knockdown power, especially in that sense. Understand? Now,
Oh, yeah.
combative-wise, I'm not going to be taking a 416 Rigby and loading all those shells in my backpack instead of taking a 223. Understand what I'm saying? So I understand the difference on what we're trying to do and accomplish that military-wise. But I don't know if you agree, but to me, it's knockdown power. How about yourself?
Yes, yes. The knockdown power for me is I've always been a big 308 guy. I like the 308 battle rifles.
Yeah.
And the military, in irony, is now searching for a new rifle to replace the 223 because they have found that it's a 200-yard cartridge when shot out of a 14.5-inch barreled M4. Yes, there are competition people who will tell you, oh, I shoot 600 meters with that. They're shooting paper. If you watch any of the reality-based combat TV shows, they had one, I believe it was called The Killing Fields, where an embedded reporter followed an Army combat team through Afghanistan. The guys on the battlefield were fighting the Taliban, and they admitted that when their 308 caliber belt feds went down, they could not reach the enemy and they could not kill the enemy because the 223 calibers they had just didn't have the zip. The 223 is nice if you're shooting a self-defense situation around your house or something light like that. But when you get out and you have to use a rifle, what is the purpose of a rifle under Jeff Cooper's old rules? Jeff Cooper was a combat expert who taught many. And the rifle was to give you power to punch through cover with reach at speed. Mm-hmm. And there are many photos of Afghan men who have been shot with the 223 who will raise their shirt up and brag to the Al Jazeera cameras and show their 223 wounds that are still walking around. Yeah. And there's not too many people who can do that with a 308 slug through them.
You know, and
so,
you also have to understand that most of those Talibans their clothes that they wear, you know, there's that muffled the 223. All the wool and scarves and jackets and vests that are piled upon each other, it's there for a purpose. And
you know, it's funny what you're bringing up. That basically comes down to tactics. Mm-hmm. And for the modern shooter, one of the things that we have to look at under tactics is what you alluded to earlier. What are they wearing and what are you wearing?
Exactly.
One of the things I teach in my classes is that if you are going to be a concealed carrier, your lifestyle has just changed. And they always look at me funny. I say, I've got a person that I know who was bragging about carrying a Ruger LC9, one of the little micro 9s, in his pocket. Mm-hmm. And I looked at him. I said, okay, you come out to the sheriff's department range on Sunday, and I will bring the timer, and we'll see what you do. Mm-hmm. He says, what do you mean? I said, I have time to shave, eat lunch, and run a lap around the block before you can put your hand in your pocket and get one round off from that little pop gun you have.
Exactly right.
I said, if it's not on your hip or somewhere you can access immediately on your body, it is a non-issue. And what I'm alluding to is that people have to learn how to buy the appropriate thick gun belt, the appropriate leather holster to carry said weapon, the reload. Everybody should carry a reload. But you have to learn how to carry a weapon concealed and then how to clear that shirt or that jacket and present it. Now, that brings up the ladies. The number one issue I have that ladies have to learn is that, okay, Paul, we said that women may have to shoot their weapon in self-defense, correct?
Correct.
What is the person attacking them going to go after 90% of the time? It is the purse.
Correct.
That is the goal. Well, if the woman has the gun in the purse, how are you going to draw it when the thief and you are wrestling over it?
Right, and you have some you got some folks out there that are going to argue that some of the concealed carry purses, you know, the hand strap is there, so when they pull it, the gun comes with you. All that. Well, it doesn't happen. All that looks good and dandy, and it's all great to sell it to the public, and people are going to go out there in demonstrations. But most women, and you see this, and women out there, I'm not making fun of you and not hitting you in whichever form or fashion, not going after that. They go to a restaurant and they put their purse on the floor.
And there's the gun.
And there's a gun. Or they put their purse in the back. So, you know, and you have to, in a protective situation, and if you're going to carry, you are the last resort. Okay? People can say, why do we need concealed carry? Why do you need to learn how to defend yourself? Well, number one, the police are a phone call away. Fine. But the police are not there when it happened or when it's happening. Correct. Okay?
They respond.
They respond. They're responders. So they're not preventing. They're responders. They might prevent because they're standing out there and some kid's not going to shoplift because he has a badge looking at him. But in all situations and all the active shooters and all these terrorists that have shot in the last, say, 3 years, some of them were stopped by what? Like what happened here in Texas and that tragedy. By folks who
concealed carry guy or an NRA instructor with a rifle.
Exactly right. So if you're going to carry, you are not only protecting yourself there, you're actually protecting an area. Because right now, with all this craziness that's going on there, we never know when something might happen. And we're not trying to be paranoid either. But you are the one that's probably going to be forced to protect a bunch of folks in a mall, in a church, in a restaurant.
And you know, Paul, that brings up a story. Do you remember the Luby's mass shooting in Texas many years ago?
Yes. She had forgotten to place her gun in the purse.
That's my point. Lady had concealed carry, and what does she do? She does not have her gun. I'm not saying that she could have
stopped it, but it was just
situation.
And it's not her fault. And it's not her fault. You know, it's just something that happens, and she has always, time and time again, she brings it upon herself. And believe me, rest at peace. Was not your fault. We had a crazy guy that went in there, and it should not by any means demean her in any form or fashion. But you know, and she meant well, and now she talks about it, and she wishes she had that gun with her. Yeah, and I've made that mistake. I carry, and I've concealed carry for the longest time. I don't open carry. In fact, here in Texas, I think now I've seen 4 people open carry, maybe 5.
But you know, Paul, I've long been against open carry for many reasons. One is tactical.
Sure.
If you are open carrying and the bad guy comes in, they are going to focus on you, and you may not see them. We're human. We don't always see everything.
I understand that.
The second thing is that not many people have the hand-to-hand combat skills to retain their weapon if someone jumps them from behind and tries to grab that openly carried pistol. I have always carried concealed, except when I worked as a uniformed police officer, because it always gave me the tactical advantage. No one knew I was armed, and they would not know until the time presented itself where it was necessary.
You're absolutely correct. And I love the law because, number one time I was stopped here at the Border Patrol, and I came out, and in fact I had a Border Patrol dog actually bite my shoulder. I got the scars to prove it. And
wow.
When I got off to file the complaint, you know, the wind blew, and here's my pistol, and everybody drove up. Hey, wait a minute, number one, I'm filing a complaint. Here's my concealed carry. You know, put your pistols down. You know, And we went in there, and I said, so I'm glad that the law is there for stuff like that not to happen, because you have accidents that occur. So that open carry can at least folks, law enforcement can respect that a little bit. Then they can ask you and so on and so forth, right? But I don't carry for many reasons sometimes, okay? And I don't carry a pistol openly because it draws a lot of attention to you.
It's unnecessary, too.
Okay, and that sometimes I'd rather have it concealed. In fact, we've talked about concealing certain pistols in certain ways and what I'm looking for. And again, it's just, I'm glad it's open carry, but my personal, I don't need to open carry. But if I'm at the ranch, if I'm going to the gas station and I get in my truck and drive out there, I am not afraid to walk out and pay for the gas at the local gas station. Understand what I'm saying? So that is true. There's some benefits there too as well.
That is true. And you know that we're talking about use of force and everything. I'm sure everybody in your audience has just heard of the death of the Border Patrol agent and the injury of his partner when they were attacked in the last couple of days.
Yeah, that's a tragedy, and it's happened before, years ago.
But the interesting part about this tragedy, when you start looking at the tactical aspects of it, the reports were that they were attacked by some illegals, but that they were killed with rocks being thrown at them, and the agents did not get a shot off. And what comes out of this is there are many people who have the misconceptions tactically about what can kill you. No. Basically, if a person attacks you and they're either throwing objects or they have an object in their hand, that is just the same as if they had a pistol or a rifle in their hand.
No, you're absolutely
correct. It is
correct.
a deadly force attack, and they should respond with their sidearm. And these two agents, we don't know all of the details, but what we do know is their guns were unfired and they were killed with rocks. And it has been a very common thing for illegals to throw rocks at the Border Patrol agents and at the South Texas deputies, because they have this mindset that, the deputies won't shoot back at us and the agents won't shoot back at us because it's only rocks. Well, we see what that mindset has accomplished.
No, and it'll continue. You'll see a lot more of it. Back in El Paso several years ago, we had the same type of incident. I can't remember what occurred, and an officer was hit in the head. And I think he was even paralyzed or something. I can't remember the whole details of that happened, but it happened in El Paso about 10 years ago, and maybe a little bit more. So rocks can be used. Hey, David brought down Goliath with a rock. So people that believe that rocks are not dangerous, or the good old. I mean, we have folks getting stoned to death with rocks, okay?
Still to this day.
Yeah, right now, so please, rocks, bricks, it's a total different entity, When you have a weapon in hand, Paul, you have to take care of business.
Another thing that we need to talk about, too, is the nature of the threat. The churches around the country are now more awake after the Texas tragedy, but there's one thing that they need to consider. Law enforcement doctrine used to be that you shot the person and your testimony in court was you shot to stop them. Well, many of the senior weapons trainers that are on the cutting edge, like Gabriel Suarez and others, have taken note that we have had many incidents over the last 3 years where Muslim jihadis have committed acts of violence, either by stabbings or by vehicles or by guns. And when you are dealing with a person who has that religious zealot motivation that are not in their right mind, you are dealing with a whole different type of cat entirely. This is not your average street criminal. And unfortunately, these type of people also have a propensity to put on a vest full of explosives and walk into an area and press a button. And the Israelis have become the experts on this. And with these people, you do not merely put two in the chest and wait to see if they stop or not. You literally have to do the law enforcement headshot and put them down, and you have to make sure that they are not able to push that button, because we saw a film of a guy in Turkey who was shot in the chest, and the officer did not fully stop the jihadi, and he was able to detonate his vest, and he blew up a train station. So we are entered an age of different people.
No, if you have to stop the threat, period, in any type of self-defense situation. If you cannot, if you're unarmed and the person comes at you unarmed and you can no longer retreat, you have to defend yourself. Okay? And you have to stop the threat. Right then and there, you have to make sure what the threat is. A person to me, or a threat to me, might not be the same thing as a threat to my friend sitting in front of me or to you or so on and so forth, okay? So what is a threat to the police officer might not be a threat to the victim, okay? So that's where we have, and this, I rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6 mentality has to be washed out, because we all grew up with that. But in all actuality, threats that are viable, threats that are made verbal, threats that are towards a person, threats, usages of words such as destroy. I'm going to destroy you, and they're no longer going to find you. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to beat the shit out of you. Those are threats. Okay? If somebody says F you and F you tomorrow, and, well, that to me does not a threat. That's more than me like, okay, go fly a kite. You know what I'm saying? That's an insult. So once people start using certain destructive tones in their language, then it has escalated. Now, people might say...
And Paul, you bring out a very good point. Peyton Quinn wrote a book many years ago, and he described what you're talking about in pretty articulate language. What you are actually saying, Paul, is when the language is correct, the fight has already started. It's
exactly right.
Blows or shots have not been exchanged yet, but the fight has started.
Yeah, absolutely correct. And
it's on.
And that it's just a matter of time before the two trains hit each other. And people do not understand that. You can quash it, you can move it, you can smile, you can use everything else, all the malicia, everything else that you've learned in the schools and learned from your professors, and walk off and kind of brush it off. But the threat's still there. So, this is something that you grew up with it, and I grew up with. You see you see folks going into bars, they're back to the door, at the bar, drinking left and right, racing cane, insulting everybody with their back to the door. When we grew up, it was you go to a bar, you go to a restaurant, you go everything, and you make sure that your back is not to the door. You're facing the door.
That is true.
And that's something that has been lost. And people say, well, I'd rather be the one that, no. You have to start from back then. We've lost all that little awareness that has not been passed down.
And something else that's interesting. Mark Human is a weapons and tactics expert from South Africa, and he comes to Texas in the San Antonio area and trains classes about once or twice a year.
Okay.
And he does a very excellent job. And one of the things that he addressed in this particular instance is that when the situation and the tactics of the situation have gotten to a certain point, you access your weapon. You draw your weapon and put it down by the side of your leg. You draw your knife and you conceal it under your arm, because it eliminates the fumbling and the time lag that if you truly are in a lethal confrontation, there is no doubt it is coming, and you are justified. You should go ahead and pull your knife, pull your gun, put it where you have it immediately accessible, already out of the holster, and prepare to engage whatever attacker comes at you, and you eliminate that fumbling.
No, you're absolutely correct. It's the pulling out of the weapon, the draw that many people forget to practice. And it happens with blades and knives. Well, Brett, I want to thank you for giving your insights, and those folks out there that were watching and paying attention, hope you could grab something a little bit out of here. There was a lot of pearls that were discussed, especially from an expert such as Mr. Gould. So once more, thank you. And you have a great Thanksgiving over there in Louisiana. And
Thank you, Paul.
let's see when we get together. I want to get back over there and eat some soft shell crabs, and we can go out there and cook a little bit. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
And you take care. And for those folks out there, have a safe and happy Thanksgiving. And remember, if you're going to go out there and drink after Thanksgiving and Black Friday, call a taxi, call Uber, get home safe. All right? Until next time.